Welcome back, everybody. All right, today we're going deeper into the progressive movement. We're looking at how were both political parties embracing reform and what differences did they have during the progressive movement. Focus, compare and contrast the views of Democrats and Republicans to the relationship of government and business during the progressive era. Okay, so government and business, remember, we are moving away from laissez-faire. We are moving into a period of government regulation. Now, this is going to happen on both sides of the fence. How are they the same? How are they different? That's what we're looking at right now. Okay, so there's going to be a very big impetus towards some more reform, and that's going to come from the financial panic of 1907. Roosevelt is elected to his own term in 1904, and it's going to be a huge wave of popularity. People generally liked Roosevelt. The teddy bear is named after him. He's going to be a charismatic president. He's going to be a likable president. And he was really starting to worry the Republican bosses with his cries for regulation, taxing incomes, and protecting workers. So in 1907, there's going to be a financial panic. And there's going to be banks. There's going to be run on banks. People are going to lose all kinds of money. And the Republicans tried to label this on Roosevelt. They called it the Roosevelt Panic. And they said it was caused because Roosevelt's trying to meddle with the economy. But Roosevelt is going to use this crisis. He's going to push for reforms to try to protect people. He's going to push for the Aldrich-Vreeland Act of 1908. And that's going to allow banks to issue emergency currency. So we're going to start to see the expansion of greenbacks or paper money in order to make sure that the currency is readily available, especially in the West. And they're also going to start the way towards the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. The Federal Reserve is what we have today, and if you look at your money, it actually says Federal Reserve Note on your money because it's issued by the Federal Reserve. Basically, it is a national bank. And it is a way for us to regulate the economy and basically make it so that financial panics are a little more rare. So the beginnings of reform are going to start because of this financial panic. In 1908, there is going to be another election. Roosevelt decides not to run for his second term on his own. You have to remember, he took over early from McKinley in his first term. He won his own election in 1904. In 1908, he's going to step down. He chooses William Howard Taft to take over for him. Now, Taft is going to be a protege of Roosevelt. Taft is going to be somebody who Roosevelt thought he could control and do the right thing. He was Roosevelt's governor of the Philippines, so he was looking over the American efforts in the Philippines for a while. And he also held a number of posts for Roosevelt. The Democrats are going to pick William Jennings Bryan for a third time in 1908, and he's going to lose even worse. There's also going to be a Socialist Party candidate, or translate that to communist, in the role of Eugene Debs, who's going to manage to win almost 500,000 votes. Taft is going to win handily, riding in on Roosevelt's popularity. Bryan is going to basically win the South, and Taft is going to win the much more populous North. Roosevelt is going to basically bill this as, if you vote for Taft, it's a continuation of my policies. So Taft comes in 1908. In 1909, he's actually sworn in. He's the biggest president we've ever had physically. This guy weighed over 300 pounds. They actually had to construct a special bathtub for him in the White House. Can't make this stuff up. Even though he's a very large man, he was a very smart man. He graduated second in his class in Yale. He was a lawyer, and he had a very good reputation as being a good lawyer and a good administrator in the Philippines, a very judicious guy. He shared a lot of Roosevelt's ideas, but he didn't have the same personal appeal as Roosevelt. America fell in love with Theodore Roosevelt. This is a man that's going out and wrestling different animals. I mean, he's wrestling a bear with his bare hands and everything. Roosevelt's a very likable guy. Taft just does not have that same likability. And Taft prefers just to do things kind of, you know, you can go take care of it. So, if you take a look at foreign policy, for instance, Roosevelt had the big stick policy, or the Roosevelt corollary. Latin America better play by the rules, and if they don't play by the rules, we're going to slap them down with a big stick. Whereas Taft had dollar diplomacy. Do what we tell you to do, or we're going to hold money back from you. So, if you're good little boys and girls in Latin America, we give you money. If you're bad little boys and girls and don't do what we want, you don't get the money. That's Taft's milieu. Whereas Roosevelt's like, do what we tell you to do, or we're going to slap you around a little bit. Okay? So that kind of illustrates the difference between the two of them. Taft's more hands-off. He still wants to get the same effect, but he's just doing it. He's going about things different ways. In terms of trust busting, Taft was a lawyer, and he's going to use the courts. He is going to use the courts aggressively, going after monopolies. He's going to take the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was an anti-monopoly act passed in 1890, and he's actually going to use it. On top of that, they're going to be working to get in 1914, there's going to be another antitrust act that's passed, even though that comes in the Wilson administration. But over 90 lawsuits against trusts are going to be brought in 4 years. Standard Oil is going to be broken up. 1911, U.S. Steel is going to be going after. So Taft's really going to use the courts. He's going to use the courts more aggressively than Roosevelt did. Roosevelt's known as the trust buster. Taft is really the one who broke up a lot more trust because he was using the courts. Whereas Roosevelt would do things publicly and go face to face with a leader. So even though Taft is working on a lot of the same agendas, he's not as public about it. And the public is kind of seeing him as kind of weaker. So there's going to be a split. In 1909, Taft is going to call on Congress to reduce the tariff. Basically, he's going to say that competition is going to be good for business, which is a Democratic perspective. The Republicans didn't go on that. Republicans wanted high protective tariffs. And the Payne-Aldrich tariff is going to really anger a lot of other Republican supporters, including Roosevelt. On top of that, he is going to open up public lands in Wyoming and Alaska to corporate development. You got to remember, this violates the 3 C's of Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt wanted to conserve, he wanted consumer protections, and he wanted corporate regulation, right? Taft is going to open up, this is going to be breaking up one of those 3 C's and going after the conservation. So these couple of things, this is going to make Theodore Roosevelt very upset. He's also going to be very upset that the Democrats are going to win congressional seats in the 1910 election. So they're going to split, and gearing up for the election in 1912, Roosevelt is going to come back into the race. And Roosevelt's going to create his own political party. It's going to be the National Progressive Party. But when reporters were asking Roosevelt if he feels up to running, because he was getting older at that time, Roosevelt looked at the reporter and goes, "Boy, I feel as fit as a bull moose." And after that, the National Progressive Party gets the name the Bull Moose Party. And Theodore Roosevelt is going to be running basically against Taft and the Republicans. And Taft is going to be running for a second term, and then Roosevelt's going to be running. So it's going to be a three-way race in the election of 1912, where you have Roosevelt with the Bull Moose Party, Taft with the Republican Party, and Woodrow Wilson with the Democratic Party. Because Taft and Roosevelt are running for the same voters, Wilson is actually going to be able to come out ahead in this. All right, there's the bull moose. Roosevelt, interesting story. Roosevelt was actually shot on the campaign. I think I told you the story where he was shot, but he had a copy of his speech in his pocket, and the bullet didn't penetrate fully, and he ends up giving and finishing his speech. Even though Roosevelt's extremely charismatic, the Democrats are going to come out ahead because the Republican vote was split, and the Democrats are going to get the majority of the vote. All right, so let's go into this. Now, during the campaign, Roosevelt is going to be campaigning on an agenda of new nationalism. And Democrats are going to be going on new freedom. Both of these policies are going to try to move away from policies of laissez-faire. So both the Republicans and the Democrats are going to see they want government to be active in the government and the economy. So basically a government that does stuff, a government that steps in, a government that is not laissez-faire. But here is the difference. Roosevelt in New Nationalism wanted the government to regulate industry. Basically, big businesses are okay as long as the government can regulate them. And that government regulation was key. Roosevelt was pushing for women to get the right to vote. He also wanted to see government regulations such as minimum wage laws and to publicly support health care. Now, over here, New Freedom, this is Wilson. Wilson wanted to favor small businesses instead of big businesses. Wilson believed that laissez-faire worked better as long as you had smaller businesses. He thought that unregulated, monopolized markets are going to be bad. You need to have competition, so he wants to promote competition. Where over here, Roosevelt is willing to have big businesses, he's willing to have monopolies as long as they're regulated. All right? Now, because everything is smaller, Wilson wanted no social welfare. He wanted free markets that can provide for the needs of the people. And he also wants banking reforms and tariff reductions. Now, if we take a look at this and think about these differently, okay, big business, but regulated big business, an active government working with the economy, small business, people taking care of their own needs, one-on-one, little government interference. This, Roosevelt, is a continuation of Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist ideas. Over here, this is the ideal of the yeoman farmer working his own land and taking care of himself, the small business where government is not involved. This is Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans. The ideas and names have changed, but they're still the same ideas popping back up. Big government versus little government. Today it's the Democrats pushing for big government, and the Republicans are pushing for small government. So the parties have changed positions, but the ideas are pretty much still there, even though the technology and social conditions have changed. Do we have a big government or do we have a little government? These ideas are still there. So because of the split, Wilson is going to win the election in 1912. He is only going to be the second Democratic president elected since Abraham Lincoln, Grover Cleveland being the other. Roosevelt won 88 electoral votes, Taft won 8 electoral votes, Wilson 435, and that's because the Republican Party split. Eugene Debs, the communist, wins almost 1 million votes. Important. So if Debs is winning almost 1 million votes, that should be telling you that there are going to be people that say that even though government is changing, even though there is reform happening, it's not enough. After this, actually, Taft is going to become Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. One of the only times that ever happens. He goes back into government, becomes a Supreme Court Justice after this. Of course, John Quincy Adams goes back into Congress after he was president, but that usually doesn't happen. Usually presidents retire from public life afterwards. Actually, here's an aside. If Hillary Clinton was elected president, I actually thought she was going to try to name Barack Obama to the Supreme Court. Because Obama is very similar to Taft. Obama used the courts, and Obama is more of a legal scholar than he is like an executive. But that's just an aside. All right, let's go back here. How are the political parties embracing reform, and what difference do they have? Basically, we want to focus on the new nationalism, new federalism difference. Compare and contrast the view of Republicans, the relationship to government, and business in the progressive area. How are they the same? How are they different? That's what I want you to focus on. Okay, people, and I look forward to it. Have a good one. Email me if anything.